Y ¿cómo estás? Is Damn Sam here? Gav's not here, unfortunately, with another podcast. It's a bit of a change to the format today. We're joined by a close friend of ours, which is Miles McDermott. He's co-founder and managing director at Aire Global Limited. He's going to be telling us of how he went from working for a company and founding his own successful business in the competitive design sector. We'll be inviting regular guests on the show to tell us about their unique stories. So, Miles, we're into it. So, if you can just start off, what school did you go to, pal?
Yes, Sam. I started out at Wilthorpe Junior and Infant School, and then I was due to go to Holgate or Kingston, living around these parts of Barnsley. But I ended up going to Darton High School up in Kexborough, and it was a good choice, really. I met a lot of lifelong friends there that I'm still friends with.
So, how come you went there and not to Holgate?
So it all started with me, my older brother Nick. He went to Honeywell, and I think when Nick, at the end of his first year at Honeywell, which is where my two older brothers went, sort of 8 or 9 years before, Honeywell was shut down, and they were looking for another school. My mum was always quite prominent, as anybody who knows her knows that she's involved in a lot of things. Is my mum, and
She's a lovely woman.
She is, yeah, and. I don't know how it came around. I was quite young at the time, but I'd have only been sort of 8 or 9, I think, 9 or 10 when that decision was made. But Nick went to Darton, to Kexborough, so I just followed in his footsteps, really.
Is it old Darton School? It's not, because obviously they knocked it down and built a brand new academy, didn't they? So you went to old one.
Yeah. So again, so with Honeywell closing down, I think after Nick's first year there, at the time, Darton School was actually split between two sites. One actually in Darton, which was first and second years, which was a really old building, and then a newer building up at Kexborough, which was like the upper school, higher school, which I think you went to in the third year. So you kind of got protected from a good shoe-in and a bit of bullying for a couple of years, and then released into it unprepared. But funnily enough, again, at the end of my first year at the lower school, which was an old wood-built building, somebody set it on fire during its school holidays.
I can't see that in Barnsley.
No, and it was burnt to the ground. So we went up in our second year. So yeah.
So what were your favourite subjects? You know, when you were at school, what sort of, what took your eye? You know what I mean? Which ones were you best at?
Favourite subjects was I was always interested in geography, sciences, but also English as well. But in terms of what I was best at, to be honest, I found school fairly easy. GCSE, always did reasonably well. Didn't really get into much trouble at school. I was probably quite a nice boy.
Did you do any sports?
Yeah, I was always into cricket, more so than football, and I played cricket at junior levels pretty much all year round. So yeah, I played with some local clubs and whatnot.
What type of, how did you go on with your exams? You were doing GCSEs?
It was GCSEs, yeah. So I think I got all A's and B's at GCSE. But to be honest, as life went on and I got more interested in other things, like girls and all that sort of stuff, and cricket and stuff like that. Yeah, and to be honest, I didn't really apply myself that much towards the end of school, which was a bit of caused a bit of friction between me and my mum. My dad was a bit less sort of interested in all that stuff. He was in the police, a detective, so he was always working and everything else. But my mum was always heavily involved in it. So we sort of bumped heads quite a lot. She used to push me quite hard, and I think I kind of pushed back quite a lot as well. So I didn't really do a lot of revision. I didn't do a lot of homework. And as I said, GCSEs were kind of fairly straightforward, really, in the end.
Did you move from like that school to sixth form, or did you go into a working environment apprenticeship?
No, so my plan was always university, but it was kind of, if I'm being honest, my mum's plan. But I always thought that's what you do anyway. I'd never really considered not sort of doing anything else. Certainly not trades or things like that. It never really occurred to me, to be honest. And I'll be perfectly honest, I'd never really had a burning ambition to to sort of take up a particular career. Never knew what I wanted to do, which is quite difficult. To sort of focus on anything. So I went to the old sixth form college on Huddersfield Road, which I now live behind.
Oh, and Nick's used to have a flat there, didn't he?
Yeah, Nick's got an apartment there. And funnily enough, Tracy, who was my fiance, my partner now, and we've got 2 kids. We actually met in A-level English in that building.
It's a great coincidence, that.
It's weird, isn't it? And now we live on the housing estate behind it.
There's some kind of magnetic thing that dragged you there.
Yeah. But yeah, it was good. It was good. I enjoyed it. I only live around the corner as well, easy to sort of get to. But to be honest, I went into my A-levels again a little bit on the lazy side. And the problem with A-levels is they're a big step up from GCSEs and you can't get away with it. And I think that because GCSEs were not that much of a problem and I could put minimal effort in, that I tried to apply the same to A-levels. It doesn't quite work like that.
Did you have any like sort of part-time jobs, while you were at school and then when you went to sixth form? Which were your first one?
Yeah, I forget which order, but my mum used to work for, I think this is when I was at school, or maybe, but mum used to work for McLean Homes. I don't think they exist anymore. I don't know who they are. Sort of new build, sort of property developers. So she used to work there. So she used to run a show home. And she got me a job cleaning show home. So I used to go around, hoover them up at the end of the day.
Cleaner, first job a cleaner.
Well, my second job was, I used to, my mate at the time, Nick Wollerton and Neil Brook, they used to, I think Nick had he had a relative who worked at SR Gents on Doddiff Road, big employer around here at the time. And again, we used to go and clean there on a night. So I used to, whatever I do, go to college and that. And then I'd go up and we'd be around sweeping floors, cleaning up after all the clothes.
Do you know what I was going to say? When you said your first job was a cleaner,
yeah.
I was going to say starting at bottom. But Wayne's cousin, Wayne's stepdad, he's got a cleaning company.
When we went, his uncle, yeah.
Yeah, and when we went to Ibiza, I remember him telling us that year they turned over 3 million, and he'd worked at Pate and set a cleaning company up. So
yeah,
it's a profitable business if you can get it.
It is
very low outlay for products, and it's just kind of labour. You just got to have trustworthy people.
Yeah. C&D Cleaning, I think it is. Who I think they've done a bit of sponsorship for us at some cricket clubs we played at, and or some football clubs, and yeah, they always helped out. So Wayne's uncle Gary, who's a top guy.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, he's done incredibly well through building a cleaning business. Yeah.
So you started off with cleaning. Is it what sort of age were you when you?
I don't. Oh God, I'd whatever. 15, 16, 17. Yeah.
And then obviously you've gone from up to university and that. Well, it's sixth form. So how did you go on with your results in your sixth form?
So that's what I said. So A-levels were a big step up. And like I said, the kind of me thinking, probably being a bit egotistical, thought I could just turn up to A-levels. So I, when I did my work placement, whatever it is, when I was at school, I actually did it at Barnsley College and in the science labs because I was really interested in science at the time. So I started my A-levels I did chemistry, biology and geography. And geography was all right, but to be honest, I made a bit of a mess of the chemistry and biology. You really have to apply yourself to subjects like that. I mean, there's some really difficult things. So I ended up coming out of those with an AS level.
Because you've got to be good at maths as well, yeah, for chemistry.
But it's complicated subject matter, and if you don't apply yourself and spend the hours, sort of in books rather than in pubs, then
I mean, best learning is something that you're interested in. I always think, how can you be interested in chemistry and that kind of thing? But obviously, there's somebody for every subject, isn't there?
Yeah, and I still find it fascinating. I love science. I think at the time, I don't know what it was. I was probably just a bit of a lazy kid. I'd had it easy, I think. I never had a particularly hard life, not a particularly privileged life. My dad was in the police. Mum was, she ended up being a teacher, but just a very normal childhood, but never really wanted for anything, but never, had anything, kind of over the top either. So we were always just kind of middling, and it was just easy to take that. I think that kind of, those sort of traits just kind of defined who I was at the time, really. So I didn't really apply myself properly. Took AS levels in chemistry and biology because I realised I was just making a mess of it, really, through not working hard enough and taking it seriously. Continued with my geography. I can't remember what I got in geography in the NSC, I think. And then what I did was, and this is how I met Tracy actually, because she's same age as me, but the school year below. And I ended up doing A-level English the first and second years in 1 year. And then I did environmental science on top of that as well. So I kind of crammed like, I don't know, 3 or 4 A-levels into a year and really had to work at it. So I ended up coming out with the grades I needed. But again, I
always
genuinely,
think environmental science, one of them subjects that were just thrown in there so
Yeah.
people could get a pass.
Yeah.
Like with at our school, the own, what were it? Domestic summer or other. And I think the one thing is, if we want somebody to get so many subjects and that, get them to do the hard environmental science.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I did it. Cause so I had sort of had geography, English, and then that third A level. I remember sitting there at the time, and it's quite a difficult feeling, really, not having a clue what you want to do or why. And I think kids are forced to make decisions far too early in life.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll come on to it in time, but I didn't really get serious about my career until I was 30, 32. Yeah, so I was sat there. My mum was a teacher, and I decided to do a QTS, which is qualified teacher status. So I went to Breton and started a degree in environmental science with QTS. So I was basically training to be a teacher.
What did you think of Breton? So it was a lovely setting, isn't it?
It was nice, but I remember, do you know what? I know if I fit in somewhere straight away. And there's companies that I've worked for where I just felt that straight from the off. And I turned up for my degree, and well, my mum actually did her degree at Breton Hall as well, and it's a very artsy kind of, it's very educational establishment with a lot of people that are from that type of world. And I'm not sure what people's political views were, but I imagine they were quite left-leaning and everything else. So you can imagine the sort of environment it was.
It's a lovely setting.
It is, yeah.
And it's got one of the best, apparently one of the best dogging spots in England.
I don't think dogging were invented back then. That's like a new thing.
It's always on. It's always in news anyway. So just throw that one in.
Well, I'll check it out.
I know you went and been down there, but
no,
but it's in just a gorgeous setting. It's in a
beautiful
setting. It's Yorkshire Culture Park, isn't it?
It is, and it's one of those that Wakefield seems to claim, but I'm certain Breton's in Barnsley.
Yeah, I thought it were always Barnsley. Wakefield's always
it sits under Wakefield Council, but it's it's what, 5 minutes from our house, so it's got to be Barnsley in my book.
I mean, I always say Wentworth Woodhouse is Barnsley as well.
Is that Rotherham?
It's Barnsley, isn't it?
We always but they leave us all rubbish bits, don't they? Take all nice spots.
I know. Not now though. We're fighting back, aren't we, with town centre? So so then you're at university. Oh, so then you go up to university. How did you pick your university? Did you have a choice?
Well, because it actually was quite a good teacher training place, but I'm not really painting myself a good picture here, but to be honest, I'm a bit of a home bird as well. I've done a lot of travelling through work.
Yeah.
And I lived abroad for a while, which I suppose we'll talk about later. But I never really wanted to be away. I had quite a comfortable upbringing and a comfortable existence, and anything that was threatening that was like, no. So with it being nearby, it was just a logical place to go. To be honest, there weren't a lot of thought at the time. It was right, do a degree. And this is not a criticism of my mum, Pat, at all, but she really, really wanted me to do a degree. I think it was a thing for her because none of my other brothers went to university.
What year was that then?
I left school in
93. Did I know you then?
No, I left school in 93. So it'll have been, what, 95?
95. I think I met you around about 2003, 4, something like that.
Yeah, we're talking what? It's a long time ago now, 30 years, not far off.
30 year. A lot of water gone under the bridge.
A lot of water gone down my throat as well.
So take us from there then. So you get your degree and...
No. So,
right.
so basically I was sat there, and again, I know if I don't like something pretty quick, and I think I'd gone on my first kind of placement to a school. I was like, I can't stand kids. I didn't even have kids myself till we were 35, 36. And I was just
I've had a few teachers like that when I was at school.
Yeah, no, I was just like, I came home one day and I went, Mum, I don't want to do it. I said, I don't want to be a teacher, and I don't like kids. I'm not passionate about it. And we had a big row. It was really big. It was, it was like tears and all kinds of stuff, because I think part of it was my mum's ambition for me. But again, she was like, right, if you come out, it's on you. Now, luckily, it's paid off. It took quite a while. But yeah, I made a big decision. I had a mate from school called Dean Hart, who's now God knows what he does, but he's like a senior systems architect for Amazon it was in San Diego, but it's now in Denver, I think. But he said to me at the time, I'm working at the BP flexible printing site at Darton on the way to motorway at 38. And he said, there's a job going for a junior planner there. Do you want me to put your name forward? And I was like, don't even know what it is. It's basically where they make the film for Pampers bags, bread bags, and then they print it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, whatever. It's a job. At least I can get a job and look like I've not made a bad decision. So I left my course. Mum got over it fairly quick, and she always supported me in the end with everything that I did. To be fair, never made me feel guilty about it, And I went to BP Flexibles at Darton.
Did it used to be called BXL?
It was BXL, BP Flexibles, then Parkside, and now it's like an industrial park.
All kind of doing the same thing to do.
It was always plastics. The same thing, I think. Yeah. But funnily enough, my best friend Wayne Burke, his stepdad Paul Chapman worked there as well. So he was one of the, I think he made printing plates, and it was a really good employer at the time. Printers used to earn a fortune. The plate makers used to earn a lot of money. There was loads of shifts, loads of overtime.
I can remember
it was
quite a few kids who I knew got jobs there. And they said it was really good money.
Amazing, yeah. But I mean, a number one, flexo printer. I don't know what they earned, but the rumours were even at the time they'd be earning 50, 60 grand a year, and that's in the 90s.
And it was good shifts and all, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they'd do so many on, and then have like a bit of time off.
Exactly, yeah. But it's a skilled job. I mean, flexo printing and things are skilled jobs, and they take a lot of time to learn properly. But as I said, as you get up to sort of a number one printer back then, they were on really, really good money. But it was brilliant actually, because it was a bit of money in my pocket. I forget what I earned. It weren't a lot. Actually, sorry. Do you know what? I actually first went to First Direct. The bank, telephone bank. Our kid was working there, Nick, and I took a job there. It was terrible money at the time. Probably like $7,000 a year or $8,000 a year. It was nothing. And so I went there and answered phones for sort of 6 months, but they gave you had a free vending machine with Coca-Cola and chocolate bars. So I just used to drive to Sturton at Leeds, just on the way in. But you were literally, you could never leave your station, go to the toilet and everything else. Everything was data driven, monitored. But you got a bank account with them, but you could only, at that time with First Direct, you could only get a bank account with me if you earned so much money, because it was quite an exclusive bank. And I've still got my First Direct bank. Anybody needs to bank with First Direct. It's brilliant. So it's a wonderful bank. But so I was kind of, it was all right, but there was a lot of pressure on sales. And I've always been a bit of an introvert really at heart, and trying to flog people stuff that they haven't asked for, I couldn't understand the concept. And obviously,
is this that time when obviously now you're getting these things where it's, did you have a credit card with so and so? So were you all selling them?
People would bring up and say, "Can I have a bank balance?" Because at the time there was no apps, the internet was not really a thing, and they'd ring up and they'd be like, "Right, can I have a bank balance, please?" And you'd be like, yeah, and then you basically get a list of products that you think you could sell them, and they'll be like, "Oh, just before you go, have you thought about a credit card? Have you thought about remortgaging?" And it was telesales basically. So it was customer service with telesales.
They still do that now in a way, because they do it if you ring gas place up or out like that. Have you got insurance for your water pipes, or have you got insurance for your gas pipes and stuff? So they're still doing it now.
Exactly, but it taught me a little bit about. Gave me a bit more confidence, I think, in talking to people. Learned me a bit about customer service, other things as well. I didn't think I was particularly good at it, but I swear to God, to this day, right, I used to get my month-end sales figures. We used to have a team meeting, and I used to be like first, second every month in sales. And the sales guy, when they used to sit with you, training you, so it'd be like, right, I've got someone sat with me, I'm gonna have to give it something this time. And as soon as they're gone, you'd stop selling it, because you'd be like. But every month I used to come out in like the top 1, 2, 3.
And you weren't even trying.
I weren't even trying, but I don't think they were my numbers. But he used to love me, this guy, and I can picture him, but I forget his name now. But he used to be like, "Oh, Miles, you're great." This, that, other. But anyway, then I think it was Dean who got in touch, and I ended up at BP. But it was, it was a good grounding really in terms of going out, working shifts. And
So you'd gone as an actual apprentice, whatever it was. What Cole were doing?
No, so I went in so I went to BP as a junior planner. So basically, what we had to do was plan. So they had all these machines that actually, so you get all the resin, you create the film based on different, sort of thickness of film and weight of film and everything else, color of film and so on. So we plan all of that based on the orders that we're in, and then we would plan all the print production. But obviously, you plan it all with similar colors and all this kind of stuff, so they're not always doing full wash ups and everything else in between. So it was driving out efficiency really from planning. But I was a dog's body to start with. I'd be going down, getting all the production sheets off the press, getting the piss taken out of me by printers, getting thrown in bins and skips and stuff like that.
But serving your apprenticeship.
Yeah, but do you know what? Again, it kind of taught me. Yeah, but exactly. But I could have, if I'd gone straight into an office and gone and got a job in Leeds in an office and it's all nice and all that, and all right, there might be a knobhead here and there, but it were a proper industrial, grounding really in work, and it taught me not to be, what the real world's like.
Yeah. So how many years were you there, and where did this?
I think I did about 18 months, a year, 18 months. But it was really interesting actually, because we used to actually print. It was a massive magnetic board, and there were these tiny little tags, like an inch and a half by 2 or 3 inches. And I used to have to clean them all off, and we'd use these felt tip pens sort of thing. And I'd have to sit there and write out loads of details of a job, right? So it was like the customer. So now you'd have sort of digital cloud-based planning systems, but it was a job ticket on a tiny little magnetic thing. And we used to plan them out. And I swear to God, there were hundreds of these things every day. So I used to sit there writing them out. I had them all on the boards, and then we had it's like T cards for the extrusions. That was for the print, the magnetic things for the print, and then T cards for the extrusion of film, which was a lot simpler. But what they used to have a guy there who was I can't remember if he was like site manager or production director or whatever he was, but it reminded me of like an old school sergeant major, and I'm sure his name was something like John Sargent or something. Or I don't know if I've made that up, but he was a terrifying character, like terrifying. I mean, I was shit scared of this guy. And we had a lovely guy called Nigel. I think he's passed away now, but he was like the planning manager. Really old school, knew everything about that place, and him and John used to have full on rows basically.
Did you not used to sing that song to him?
Go on.
Making plans for Nigel. That's just spit.
No, I don't even know it.
XTC.
I've never heard that. Yeah.
We're always making plans for Nigel. You not heard that?
That's a new one on me, mate.
Straight into my head.
But then there was a guy. So there was anyway. But it was chaos really. So basically, what happened was, he used to come in, and so the production guy used to go down the site. He'd come up, and then every day it was the same. I used to shit myself. I used to sit there and I'd be like, this is a full office and all that. So there's all accounts team and everything, right? And he'd be like, what am I looking at? And you'd be like, what?
Did he have a loud voice?
Yeah. But he was like, honestly, and he'd just get his arm and he'd go, what the... And he'd get his arm and he'd just literally walk down, and all these tags I'd spent all day, he'd rag them all off the wall, and just he'd pull out T-cap, literally throw it all on the floor. And this guy I used to work with used to have a big rows with him as well. And so he'd be sat there, right? I swear to God, he'd have his keyboard, he'd be smacking his keyboard on top of his monitor, and it was just carnage for like 15 minutes. Then we'd have to go and replan it all, and everybody just, get the job done. But again, it just taught me that, do you know what? There's different ways that people get results in.
Sounds like
work.
His blood sugars were probably up and down.
Honestly, it was terrifying.
Like to drink on a neat, and then he were up and down.
Yeah, it was terrifying. But like I said, it was a good grounding in what I guess industrial work.
And how did you get onto your next place then from there?
Where did I go after that? That was it. So because it was packaging. So we were printing packaging and everything else. It taught me a bit about packaging. This is how I've ended up kind of where I am today, really. So I learnt about film and different types of film and everything else, different gauges of film and different usages and so on. And then I learnt a little bit about print and how colours are used and everything else. And I just remember looking in the Barnsley Chronicle one day. That's where you used to find jobs. And there was a company called Gal Farm that I'd never heard of. And they were based up at Dodworth on the industrial estate there. And they were basically the first company in the UK that had I think it was paracetamol, licensed paracetamol for over the counter. So they owned the license.
My mum used to work there.
Did she?
My mum worked there in offices.
Right.
Margaret Cooper. She worked up there in offices.
Right.
I don't know what year it was though, but
yeah,
that was her last job. before she retired. She
So I'd have-
worked up there. How
right.
weird's that?
I'd have been there probably about 98,
I'll ask-
99.
when I see her, I'm going to ask her about that.
Well, I remember the Millennium Bug was a thing when I was there. An email actually kind of came out when I was at Gal Farm.
Yeah.
But there was a job there for, like an artwork coordinator. So basically what they would do is they'd either design something themselves or a design agency would design something. It'd come into us and we'd do all the regulatory checks.
Yeah.
So we'd check all the copy, all the information on the parks, make sure and then it'd go off to the, is it MHRA or whatever they're called? That's the government body for medicines control. And we'd basically coordinate all that process, and then we'd send the files off to the artwork and repro house, which is kind of what pre-press. So that's how again I got into packaging. We used to have a designer there called Gareth. I think it was called Gareth, and I used to sit with him quite a lot. And we would get projects for Gal Farm, so they'd have their own tertiary brand, so they'd be doing a lot of retail their own labels, Sainsbury's, Tesco, paracetamols, things like that. But they'd also have their own. So when they couldn't stock them, they put those in. And we used to sit there with the designer, and we'd design the packs together. And then a vacancy came up actually in the marketing team there. They wanted an assistant product manager, so going from just managing artwork to managing the whole product life cycle. And they said they'd put me through an HNC in business and marketing. It's on day release.
A national certificate.
Yeah, HNC, so BTEC HNC. So I did 2 years. I think, is it 2 years? Them things, or a year? I can't remember. But our kid did it as well. Nick did. We both did it at the same time.
Did you like? I mean, I did mine in building, but you had to do it in units. Were yours units or were it just one course? So you had to you got half. When I did it, you had half units, and I think you had double units on some of them. So you could get 2, and you had to get 10 anyway to pass your HNC. Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't really get a grade for your HNC, but you got, you're right. And I remember, and it was the first time I'd ever even, the whole concept of a P&L or a balance sheet and things like that, which now that's kind of what I do most of the time. But that was my first intro into sort of, managing profit or looking at profit and loss and how businesses work on a really basic level. And there was marketing components in there as well. So yes, I worked as a assistant product manager there for a while, and I remember launching things like NutraSweet sweeteners and things like that, saccharin based sweeteners, and again just working on the pack designs with a designer, and doing research, looking at things like Mintel reports, getting all of that data to take to the business to say, right, here's a business case, this is why we should launch a granulated sugar alternative, and looking at trends in markets and things like that. So
did you have to collate data then, sort of
to a degree,
do research, do market research?
We didn't do the market research, but we'd use we'd use information that was readily available. So we'd pay a fee to a market research company, and most of it was off the shelf white paper stuff.
Yeah.
But it was just building a business case, and also then that allows the sales teams to go to an Asda and say, right, you need an Asda own label granulated sweetener, or I don't know, fibre drink or whatever it might be. But it was all medicines and wellness based.
So were Gal Farm, they're a nationwide company, or is it just a company that's based at Dodderth?
It was based at Dodderth, but it was UK only. But what they did was they used to, they worked with all the major retailers. Asda supplied all of them, Lloyd's Pharmacy, people like that, and Superdrug. But what they did was they didn't manufacture; they owned the license to a paracetamol or whatever. And you can imagine, so every time someone buys paracetamol, they get paid.
I think we're on about doing a serviced accommodation on one of the properties that I've got, and I was doing a survey I was googling companies and that to see whether they were how big they were. There's a thing you can go on to Google and you can do a search area and you can see the turnover. I don't know which one it is and I'm sure Gal Farm come up and it were millions and millions.
Yeah, well, I think they were bought by Perrigo, which is a big American company now. So I think they're still there, but it's completely different. But I tell you what, it was a great place to work. Again, I met quite a few people that became friends and whatnot from there. But it was brilliant. I actually loved working at Gal Farm. It was great, and
because it's close to your house.
It was close to our house. I could go home at lunchtime. No, it was. I just enjoyed it. It was just a really good vibe, and it was. And not for the first time. There were rumours around. And one day I just got called into the boardroom and made redundant on the spot, and it was heartbreaking, really
That was
devastating.
going to be one of my questions later on. Have you ever been sacked?
I've never been sacked, but I've been made redundant
twice.
Twice, yeah. So I've been kicked in the nuts twice, yeah.
So what's that feeling like when you get that letter, or what, a letter or personally?
Well, I remember Jim Gardner, who was the sales director there. He was a really good guy, Jim Gardner, and I remember I remember I sat down, I went to my desk in the marketing team, and there's a lady I used to work with there called Leonie, and she was just there was like, it's like when I can't remember how many people they employed at the time. Well, maybe 100 people, about 20 went, I think. So it wasn't just my role, but they were making big cuts, and I think it must have been because they were getting ready to sell it, perhaps. I don't know. But I remember coming in, and like Leonie was already in tears because I weren't the first one on the conveyor belt that day, and I think she knew that I was on the list, and I got on really well with her. And I just looked at her and I went, I don't need to unpack, do I? And she was just like in floods of tears.
Had you got commitments then?
I was like 20, 21 years old. So, but Mum and Dad had just gone on holiday for 2 weeks. I can't remember where they'd gone. And anyway, so I went in and I was like, I know what's coming, Jim. And I was genuinely upset because I didn't know how to take it. It's the first time you've ever been told you're not wanted.
Do you get that feeling in your stomach? It was horrible. Sick, feeling sick.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was a really, really crushing experience. And I remember going out. Like Mum and Dad weren't there. I didn't want to ruin their holiday. And back then, you couldn't really get older people. I think I had a mobile, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think I rang Nick, my brother, and I was just like, I've just been like sacked, made redundant. I think they give me like $5,000 or $4,500 because they were quite, they were a good company. I did enjoy it there, but I had like $4,500 in my pocket. I was 21 years old, and Mum and Dad were on holiday, so I had a good couple of weeks. So I got over it quite quickly, but it was a crushing experience, and yeah.
How quickly did you get your next job then? Were you straight looking for another job, or back at Aire Chronicle, or?
Yeah, do you know what? And I honestly, honest to God, can't remember how long I was out of work for. Not long, but I think I used a recruitment consultancy.
Right,
might have been. Yeah, probably.
Like somebody pointed you in the right direction for that then?
Honestly, Sam, I mean, it's like 20 odd years ago now.
Yeah.
So I'd have been in the early 20s at this point, probably 23, I think. Yeah, I would, because it was 2000, so I'd have been 23, 24. And but again, you kind of learn something from that, because I mean, at that point, I was like, you just get a job close to home, and you get your jobs out at Aire Chronicle, and and eventually end up working for a council, don't you? At some point, but I can't remember how I did it. I think the internet had just come out, and I just found out about, I think it was Michael Page marketing consultants, right? So I got in touch with them, and I realised then there's this big world out there.
Yeah.
So it actually pushed me outside of these four walls, and I think it was a company called Gratapalm, really strange name. They're called Creative Race now, but it's a big, massive advertising agency in Leeds. So they were up at Kirkstall.
Yeah.
And what a time that was. There was like 150 people, 120 people. There's a lot of boys and girls there. It was fast moving, and I had a good time at Gratapalm.
Is that kind of an agency then? Is this first time you've gone to an agency?
First agency, yeah. So that's how I ended up in agency world, was with Gratapalm.
Yeah.
And at the time, Gratapalm was like, it was just great, brilliant social scene. It was just fantastic. I loved it, and I had a great time. It was brilliant. But they were setting up a packaging division. They didn't have packaging,
which is what you'd been doing at your last job.
Yeah, and all just by chance, And so I started out as a junior planner. Then I did sort of packaging development and everything else, and then I went to an agency. But Gratapalm didn't really do packaging. There's advertising, digital, and then there's packaging, and packaging is a very specific skill set. It's very different. It's not like just sticking an ad on a billboard or creating a web banner. It's a really complex technical process. So they brought a lady in called Gemma Gales. There was a lady there at the time called Julie D'Ambrosio, who was the designer. And we had a couple of clients, Focus DIY and Netto, who were based at South Elmsall. And so that was my first agency life. So there were like three of us in this packaging team out of like 100 odd people, and it was all advertising. They did all Asda's. They'd been working with Asda for like 20 years or whatever. It was just mental. The social side was just outstanding. it was just brilliant. It was a brilliant place
when
to
they
be.
when they set up a new company, not new division as well.
Yeah.
You tend to get a bit more leniency in because it's all new and you're kind of making it up as you go along.
Yeah.
It seems to be better. I know Mel had it when this will be NHS. They set a new division up at Cudworth, that new centre when it were built, and she'd gone from working up wards, and because they were making it up as they were going along, they didn't know what they were doing.
Yep.
She was coming home, they'd got no work for her life at times, so she'd just come home and, you know what I mean? It was brilliant for her.
Yeah, exactly that. And because no one really knew packaging and knew what we did, it was kind of like, it was almost like, I don't know, a special project really for the business. And we were just left to get on with it. But we used to, again, this is where you learn kind of the hard way, but Focus DIY was a really good client. They were good to work with, but obviously they ended up going bust. So that was after I left Grattan Palm, but they were based down were they at Crewe, somewhere like that. So that was a bit of a trek. So again, it was first time I'd ever had to really drive to see clients and that sort of stuff and presenting. And Netto was only around the corner, but we used to go over there. It was really weird, Netto. And there was a guy there, and I probably do remember his name, but I'm not going to mention it. But it wasn't always a pleasant experience, put it that way. So we used to sit in a waiting area. Then you go into a test kitchen where they were using you were presenting the work. So it wasn't even in an office. There was no like screens like there are now, and interactive media and stuff. It was like literally we used to take a load of printouts and try and sell these designs to this marketing director of Netto. But the other agencies that we used to compete with, we all had our own categories, but there's always a bit of competition. We all used to be sat there like that. All right, yeah, you're all right. God, he's in a bad mood today, and you're like, oh God, and he'd like literally screw stuff up and throw it back, not at you, but like it was that kind of, basically like Dragon's Den, but every week, and just telling you your work shit, basically, that you'd literally put your heart and soul into.
Yeah.
So me and Julie used to go over there, design every week, but you build bonds with people like that as well. We made a pretty good team, Julie. And funnily enough, Julie is now, I mean, she's had a brilliant career in design. She ended up creative director at global agencies. But her other half, Gavin Greenhouse, our global creative director now at Aire Global, and they're back living in York. But they worked in Singapore, Australia, some of the top agencies in the world, and they're a bit of a dynamic duo, those two. But yeah, I knew Julie, and then just as luck would have it, because Gav used to work at Grattan Palm as well.
Oh, brilliant.
And so we all kind of, it's quite an incestuous industry in that way. And it's a small world. But yeah, so we kind of learnt the hard way to kind of go in and just get told that something you spent all week working on was just a pile of shit.
So what year was that?
So that'd been my mid-20s, really, going up, sort of mid to late 20s. I think I had about 2.5-3 years at Grattan Palm.
Was this when you had pub?
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Tell us about pub.
Oh, God. So, oh, God. And this is how good the Grattan Palm people were, actually. And loads of them, or a few of them have come and worked with us since, either on, people like Andy Denton and so on.
How did you end up with pub? I mean, you've probably told me its story. But...
Well, so, at the time, like I said, I've always liked a night out and everything else.
We like a drink, don't we?
Yeah, we all like it. Yeah, just, but...
Not over the top.
Yeah, but I'm kind of my own man as well. If I don't want to do it, I'll not do it. And,
what is it? Within reason.
Yeah, within reason. But Nick, my brother, he'd come out of the army because unfortunately he was like a career soldier, really loved it, and then found out he was type 1 diabetic. So obviously he had to leave the army, and that was quite a difficult period for Nick. And then he eventually started to re-establish himself, and he's built a really
I'm going to get
career.
Well, Nick's down for asking him to come on because he's got a good story as well.
He has, probably the best really, because of the stuff he's seen. But he was in Bosnia and Northern Ireland and doing really well in the army, and then obviously he got a bit of a killer blow there with the diabetes, where he was diagnosed with that. But he came out, he had a couple of rough years, I think, and then eventually found his feet, and he's gone off on a really good trajectory himself. But Nick was he was in the thick of the action in Barnsley Town Centre, and I mean, I didn't even know what house music was back then, but apparently there was a bit of a house, there was like a there was a group of people, weren't there, back then, and you'll know them all, that I didn't really know that well.
I think majority of them was going to end up on here, but
well, yeah, probably.
I've got most of them booked on here.
Yeah, probably, so. And some of them, like, have done really well for themselves, haven't they? Daly and people like that have, like superstar DJs now. But and Rob, and so they all used to. They'd be going to Ibiza, didn't they? They used to go to Ed Candy or whatever it was, Glass House in Leeds, and all these things. And I was like, oh, I'm not getting involved in all that. I was like, genuinely, the thought of it was just terrifying. I'm like, no, I'm not cool, and I'm not this. And they built up. There was like quite a good network of people there that they knew, sort of, God rest his soul, Paul Cooper. Cooper was now no longer with us, unfortunately. Him and Nick were really close pals with Rob at the time. I remember Nick coming home one day and saying, "No, I am the old Draycott's. Isaacs is the lease or whatever it is, tenancy, whatever is up for. Do you want to go in on it?" And it was like, "It'll cost you this much," and all that. And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" I didn't even think. I just went, "Yeah." So we all chipped in. Took a third each and just like did it out a bit. I thought it actually looked pretty good by the time.
You made a good job. Yeah, you made a really good job.
And but with none of us had ever run a boozer before. We had Coop running it, who just wanted to have a good time. We'd have Coop sat upstairs while staff were downstairs and no one in boozer, right, paying him, and it was just, But again, I was the one who was kind of a bit more behind the scenes, I was dealing with sort of the tax side of it and all of that again, and trying to figure out how to put a P&L together and cash. Well, I didn't really look at cash flow back then. That's something that you kind of understood as really I got more into Aire, but
it's a steep learning curve, isn't it, for you? A really big steep learning curve for you all.
Well, yeah, and you know what though? We always said, the honest truth was we did it. It was a hobby. We were never planning to do that or then get another bar, and it was. Do you know what? We just said it'll be a laugh for a couple of years, then we'll get rid of it, and we did in the end. But it's difficult. Anybody who runs certainly in Barnsley. I mean, I suppose most towns are the same.
It's a nighttime economy, isn't it?
And it's Friday, Saturday.
Sociable hours. It sounds brilliant to be able to have your own pub and that. But I mean, I used to know Simon, who used to have it before, and we used to go in Browns when he first got Browns, when he got that pub. He was chained to it. It's like we go in and we've got a life outside, but Simon was chained to it. His days off are something like Tuesday and a Wednesday or something. You know what I mean? Which what rubbish day? Where do you go?
Yeah.
And then he's got to be back, and I know he's got some staff, but you're just constantly there.
It's an hard way to earn a living though as well. You know what it's like. Certainly with Barnsley, it's almost like certainly back then.
Yeah,
people used to go to the same places at the same time, and it's hard. It's hard to make money out of it. But I'll be honest with you, we didn't want to lose money, but we didn't. It was a laugh. We just did it to be a laugh, and we had a brilliant time. And like I said, Daly used to go in and DJ on a bank holiday, Batesy, people like that. And I remember bank holiday Sundays in there. We're just incredible.
Since '82.
Hot since '82.
We call him Daly, but it's hot since '82, and
massive.
He's one of the biggest DJs in the world.
Yeah, and he used to DJ in there on a bank holiday Sunday, and I was like, he sounds good, but I didn't know anything about. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what good or bad sounds like. But there were loads of people. A kid called Ash used to DJ in there, and I think Batesy used to DJ in there, and it was brilliant. But all that group, on a bank holiday Sunday, Coop used to put on back-to-back DJs. But what he used to start with a kid called Andy Denton, who worked at Gratapalm at the time. But Andy did kind of more like old schooly, kind of real mixed stuff. It weren't like out and out house music, just to get people warmed up at like 12 o'clock. And Andy used to do some brilliant sets in there. I still know Andy to today, but and he's worked for us at Aire for probably a couple of years out of the time we've been going. But it was brilliant. I remember Bank Holiday Sundays just used to be rammed, and all that crew used to be in there, and it was just banging. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But it's just a hard way to make money, and in the end, we sold the lease on and got out before it did us any damage.
But you'd still got your job, hadn't you? So were you doing it?
Yeah,
as you had your job as well, weren't you? So
but I didn't really. I mean, I'd do a shift here and there, but I was like, I've got a day job, and Nick had a day job, but we paid Coop to manage it. So Coop left the police to take that job. Right. But it was brilliant. Again, we met quite a lot of people, and for me as well, I think as part of my development, really, I've always. You know me, it's like I don't need to be in the thick of it, and I'm happy,
on periphery.
I am, but it was like, you have to, you get to know people, And again, that was a good way for me to kind of grow a little bit. You know what I mean?
So with this job that you were doing through Day,
Yeah.
how did you end up sort of leaving this place and then?
Yeah. Right, so a load of people from Grattan Palm came over to Barnsley one Friday. We had a brilliant night. We actually, I don't know if I might get done for this, but we ended up sleeping in there. Andy was one of them, Andy Denton. It was brilliant. They were a great crew. But the packaging arm they're an advertising agency. And the packaging arm was just not going anywhere. And then the troubles with focus, they were briefing, less working. And there was a guy I worked there with called Rich Sustakovsky. So me and Rich were a bit of a team. He was like a creative art worker. So we had the account director, Gemma. There was me as the account manager, Julie the designer, and Rich was the art worker. So we'd get the files ready to go out, whereas Julie would do the creative, Rich would do the kind of more technical stuff. And I got on brilliant with Rich. We were a bit of a duo there and things like that. And Rich he'd previously worked at an agency called Storm Brand Design in Elland. But he got made redundant from there. And then he went to Grattan Palm, and then he went back. So I kind of just got a job there at Storm. And funnily enough, Richard's missus at the time, Wendy Dixon, she was the account director, and I joined working for Wendy, and she was brilliant. She was great. I've had very few. I had a lot of bosses that I would say have mentored me. I can't think of many that stand out. Not or certainly purposely tried to mentor me.
Yeah.
And Wendy was one that really jumps out, but she ended up leaving and she went to an agency called Brahm in Leeds, which was a big, sexy advertising agency up in Leeds at the time. And I was gutted when she went because I learned quite a lot under her quite quickly.
Probably saw a lot of potential with you, mate.
Well, she did, and I remember she said to me, right, the one thing that stands out is because I was an account manager there, and she just said, I just know that whenever I give you something, I just know it's going to get done.
Yeah,
that was it. My job was to make sure if she gave me something to do, it got done.
Yeah,
by when she told me it needed doing, and I told her when it was done. And but I'd stay late. I'd work with the designers. Simon Hartley was the creative director or design director there. Matthew, I can't remember his second name, but there's some really good people there. And again, some people that have come and done bits with us at Aire. Ben Catley is another lad who does a bit of freelancing for us at Aire now. And there were some good people there. And again, I learnt a lot working on Halfords. We were designing engine oil and, but looking at sort of how ranges are sort of range architecture and segmented, like you don't just buy an oil. There's a reason why you buy an oil, and then you've got to figure out how you communicate those, product benefits. And again, I was kind of just moving up and learning more. And they were a good agency, but and really good people. But again, I got made redundant from Storm.
Is this around about 2008 then? Is this right crash or is this before?
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah. So do you think that would probably had an impact on it?
It did. I'll be perfectly honest. The guy who owned Storm, and how deserved it is or not, he was a bit of he'd hire, and he had very little qualms with firing people as soon as the numbers didn't stack up. But Rich, so Rich had already been made redundant by him once, went back, and then he didn't get made redundant at the time I did, but about a year later he got made redundant again. So he got made redundant twice by the same guy. But that was I was having a bit of, to be honest, at the time, I was having quite a bit of a difficult time myself.
Yeah,
I weren't in a good place. I bought a house with someone, and that wasn't working out. I was struggling to pay my bills really, so she'd moved out. I had the house on my own. I had a car. I was just an account manager on 20 odd grand a year sort of thing, and I was struggling to get by. My mum and dad helped me out a little bit, not a huge amount, but enough. And it was I weren't in a good place at the time, and then that on top of it kind of sent me probably to the lowest point I've ever been in my life.
This is your first house, that one up near your mum's?
On Bond Road, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was living there on my own, but it was just hard. I was struggling because, I was a youngish lad, sort of late 20s now, getting up towards 30. And I couldn't afford to do the things I wanted to do, couldn't afford to go on holiday. There was a lot of, I didn't feel good about the relationship falling apart.
I think I'm just trying to think where
I can remember coming round. I don't think we one Christmas with Holmesy and them boozing there.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he'd moved out, whether he'd moved up to Tracy's.
Possibly, but yeah. So it was a really low point. I think there's a lot of talk these days about mental health, and I know exactly what people are on about, because I think I had about a 2 or 3 year period where I remember. You know what? I remember driving back from Ellen that day. They made me redundant, and you have to go up over the tops and then drop back down again through Flockton and all that. I remember just driving up that hill, and there's a massive drop off on the left hand side. I remember just looking out the window, and I just felt like I could just genuinely just wanted to turn my car off and just leave it, because it was just shit. I felt shit, and anybody who's ever struggling.
Do you think that's your lowest point then?
By a mile.
Yeah,
by a mile, and it went on for probably 2 or 3 years. You don't back then as well. It weren't like it is now.
Yeah,
you didn't talk about it. But yeah, it was a really dark time. Sat in that house on my own.
And what it because is it because did you not have a job, or were you working then, or did you not have a job for a long time?
No, I was never really out of work for very long. I always managed to get back into work quite quickly, but I don't think at the time I was particularly. I'd say good with money. I was living for a good time. You know what I mean? And every bit I made, I probably just went out and spent. So there weren't a lot to fall back on at the time. I was just a young lad, and doing youngish lad. I suppose not that young actually, back, but just doing, just not. I think the kind of theme, and when I look back now, is I just didn't really take personal responsibility. I didn't for my GCSEs, I didn't for my A levels, and I didn't really for my financial security at the time. And you look back now, and at the time you kind of think these things are happening to you, but they're not. They're happening because of you, and that's a big lesson that I've learned in life: is you reap what you sow.
But I mean, what they reckon is, or what I've read, lads never really mature until they're 30. Do you know, like, and I can understand that. I mean, it took me a hell of a long time to go, right, I'm going to have to, settle down and get a career. Yep. And you're still immature up to being 30, whereas, some mums and dads are wanting the kids out of house at like sort of 18 to 20, and they're still
good kids.
Well, lads are anyway. Yeah. Lasses tend to fly fleet nest a lot before lads, but you don't understand it. You see a 30-year-old bloke, he could still have mentality of an 18-year-old.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that was it. And I was skint on my own. Felt like I didn't feel good in my mind for a long time, and that was definitely the lowest point. And I knew then but again, right, and I know it sounds a little bit like it's a very typical thing to say nowadays, but that's when you kind of get to rock bottom. And you're just like, the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
What the fuck am I doing? Sort yourself out, take responsibility. And from that point, I started to take responsibility. I used to sit down and plan my money out. I used to, and I'm like, I can't ever be in this place again. And I took steps to work on how I felt, and that took years. They tried putting me on tablets at one point and all that sort of stuff. That just made it worse. And then when I actually just took responsibility for it, it helped.
Yeah.
And the funny thing that I found was, as I took responsibility in my life for the things that I was doing and saying and the way I was acting, things just gradually started to improve.
Yeah.
Magic. What you put in, you get out.
Had you got like a plan in your head, though, what you needed to do? Had forming your own business appeared in your head at that time? No.
Never really did. There were times when I look around and I'm like, I kind of toyed with the whole thing of, do I want to go and live abroad or work abroad or do anything? I don't know. I had no idea, but I knew something needed to change. But it was like kind of, but what? And again, I've never really, at that point, I'd never really had a clear plan. But because I was made redundant, I can't remember how I got the job again, but there was a maternity cover at Burnsley Homes, and they were moving into, really funny actually how I got the job. So Tracy, my other half, she works for the Brook Group, who built Gateway Plaza.
Yeah.
And it was being built at the time, and it was sort of still under construction. But part of this application process was how would you brand our new offices? So I was like, Trace, can you get me? So I actually went in. They took me up. I can't remember the guy's name now, but really nice guy that Tracy worked with. He took me up there, and I got loads of photographs. He got me all floor plans.
Grant
No,
Doyle.
it was. I can't remember his name now. He left not that long after. Left the book group not long after. But so he got me up there, and I got all these photographs. And then I can't remember who I did the work with, but I got a contact that I knew to help me visualize like the branding, and we put it all on, and it just blew me away in this interview. They're like, "How did you get in there?" I'm like, "Well, it's just initiative," and I didn't tell them Mrs. worked.
I didn't know you'd done branding. So
well, I did all. Yeah, well, I didn't. No, I didn't do Burnsley Homes. I took Burnsley Homes branding that, but I did all. So when you go into their offices, I'd done all the layouts for the branding. Obviously, they tweaked it slightly, but they pretty much took a lot of what I did.
Yeah.
Like sort of the vinyls and things on the walls and on the lifts and all that sort of stuff. But then I ended up getting a job there. But it was funny actually because I met some top people there as well. They were brilliant. But the girl who was going off on maternity, I didn't have much of a handover with her, but their marketing budget, I think, it was like $5,000 a year to market this entire, social housing thing. I hope no one's listening to this that weren't there, but they had a design studio in the basement of the town hall. They took me in, and I'd been used to like agencies and things like that. And I got this $5,000, and they were all they were nice people, but they just none of them really cared anymore.
Yeah.
Or I didn't get the impression that they really cared.
Yeah.
It was just no one wanted to do anything different, churning the same stuff out.
Hamster wheel.
Yeah, and they were slow, and they were using old technology, and I can't, in my mind's eye, I remember, I think I walked in and they all had cobwebs on them and stuff, you know what I mean? It was that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And I went back to him, I said, look, I'm not trying to threaten anybody in that, but I said, you need an external agency partner. And there was a company in Barnsley called GDA Marketing.
GDA
up at Lock Park.
It's that house, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they used to be based there. And there's a guy called Alistair Ferrant.
Next to church.
Yeah, so I dropped him a line. I said, look, I've got $5,000. And there was a creative director there called Jem Hager, I can't remember his name. And I said, look, I've only got $5,000, so don't laugh. But I've got these magazines and all that need doing, that go to, the people who live in the social housing, to the elderly and all that. I said, I just need some help. How can we do it? And I put them on a retainer. And literally, I'd only been there 2 months, and we just completely revamped everything, and it was brilliant. And they were like, wow.
Better quality, everything.
They were just like, wow, how have you done that? I'm like, it's not hard, is it? It's just, to me, it's just, that's what you do.
Called some favours.
Yeah, and they were just like, it's brilliant. And everything were looking slick, and it was great. And I just put them on a retainer with GDA, and GDA carried on after that. I don't know where it went. They're not going anymore. I think Alistair set up another agency, or they've moved or whatever.
The thing is still on, though, because...
the brick.
Yeah, cause we came past the other day, and I was telling Apprentice, I says, that's an agency in there. I says, but then I saw this woman walking out with like a young kid, and I thought, well, it must be a creche now. And I says,
could be, yeah.
I bet they've just left them 2 stones on with initials on GDA, like.
Yeah. So yeah, I made a bit of I made a really positive impression there, but I loved it at Burnsley Homes. I absolutely loved it because the officers were good, and I just met there were some brilliant people in that team, and there was a kid there that I still see him knocking around now, Leon Sidebottom. I don't know if you know Leon. He's just funniest kid in the world. He's up there with you. He was the funniest kid I've ever met, and we used to go out together, and as part of my job, I'd have to understand what went on these schemes, and he was just such a brilliant person, and he was involved in everything. And yeah, I still see it. I kept in touch with him like full on for ages, but he's got kids now. He lives down Wilthorpe, but what a guy he was. And there were just several other people in there, and I went on council dues, and had a good time there and everything else at Christmas, and it was brilliant. I had a brilliant time, but funnily enough, whilst I can't remember the contract whether it was 6 or 12 months, but about 6 months in, so it must have been a 9 or 12 month contract I was on. I got a call from a recruitment agency in Leeds. They went, look, we found your CV online. There's a job going at a company called Elmwood. And I was like, Elmwood Design? And she's like, yeah, it's an account manager's job. And it was good money because they paid really well. But it were up in Guiseley, which is a right trek. But if you don't know who Elmwood are, or certainly were back then, Elmwood were like one of the best packaging brand design agencies in the UK and in the world at the time.
I remember you telling me, and I'd never heard of them.
No,
and I'm like, oh.
yeah, and they used to win awards, or they were just brilliant. And I'm like, are you sure? You know, like imposter syndrome. I was like, all right. I said, well, send me CV in, but I was like, no way I'm going to get that job. And I went in, and I met him, and yeah, I remember being there. And I got this phone call. I sat at my desk at Burnsley Homes. I'm like, I went out in stairwell, and she went, "Oh, they want to make you an offer," and it was like about $7,000 a year more than I'd ever been on, and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, "Do you accept it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely."
Is this just based on your CV? Do you have a portfolio or stuff in that?
No, because you've done it in account management, because it's the designers who have a portfolio. Right. But just based on what I'd done, really, and obviously a lot of it is how you interview and how they connect with you. But I was like, I remember going home and saying, "I've been offered a job at Elmwood." I was like, all right. Anyway, I went in and I felt so guilty for Burnsley Over, because they'd been brilliant to me. Gave me a shot when I was on my arse, and I had to leave him in the lurch a little bit. But
so it was a contract.
I'd given him a month, but it was like I didn't serve a full term of the contract. But what we're going to do, and so I left Burnsley Homes on good terms. I can't remember that. Do you know what? And it's the boss. I don't think she was particularly happy, but everybody else was like, wow. And I was just like, look, it's like my dream job at the minute.
Yeah.
But it didn't really turn out. The funny thing is, right, so I went it was an account manager job I was interviewed for. I remember getting there on my first day, and they gave me a contract, and they put me down as a senior account manager, and it were on more money. So I just signed it and gave it back to her. So I was actually a senior account manager on more money than I'd interviewed for.
Yeah.
And I was like, just crack on.
So they made a mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Did you spot it straight away?
Like,
you look for what money?
Yeah, I was like, that's more than they've offered me. And it said senior account manager. I only got in as account manager. And I weren't, I didn't think I was, but I just signed it. And cracked on. So I was working on Asda and Walmart, because Asda were owned by Walmart.
Yeah.
And they did all the packaging, did like £1 million worth of work with them a year. But it was really weird, actually. So again, I'll not name names, but the lady who was the account director, so you'd have an account manager, senior account manager, and account director who ran the whole account. Then you report into a client services director that's like a business-wide role. So there's a lady called Sarah Deere who was the client services director, like the big boss. Very, very knowledgeable, quite intimidating, but God, I learnt a lot of her. But the account director, so on my second day in a new job, she just stopped coming to work. I think she was having mental health issue.
And was she somebody that you were having to thingy to?
Well, she would be teaching me how to do my job.
Oh, right. So.
Right? Because the person I was replacing had gone.
Yeah.
So there's me and a guy called Nick, who was a brilliant geezer as well. He ended up working for his dad's robot company or something. But I got on with Nick, brilliant. Like, we were like two, again, just really, really got on really well. And but he was, I'm sure he was from down south, Nick. But he just had a really good way about him, and we hit it off. But yeah, the account director just stopped coming to work. She was struggling with stress, basically. So, it's hard to be critical, but she really left us in the lurch.
Yeah.
So I'm sat there, right? So we have Asda. So Sarah Deere, the CSD, she's like, Asda chew up account managers. They just don't like anybody. I can't get them to like anyone. They're just brutal. And I'm like, all right. And Walmart was based in Bentonville, I forget which state it's in now. But they're like 5 hours behind. So you used to get in, you'd be doing my Asda job, and then like Walmart would come online halfway through my day. So I'd be there till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, every night. Like, so when people talk about working hard, long hours, so I'd be driving, in winter it used to take me 2 hours to get there. Right, so all the way up M1 through Leeds, and then out the top end towards the airport. And on a good day, it was 1 hour and 10.
Yeah.
So I'd have 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours commuting every day. And then I'd be working from 7:30 till 8:30, sometimes 11, 12 o'clock at night, getting jobs out.
Yeah.
And there was a point where I can't be asked. But you know what? It's like, I actually enjoyed working.
Well, they're doing
hard.
motorway as well then.
Yeah,
doing motorways.
Yeah, it was horrible. But I was like, do you know what? It was really, really weird because there were days when I just didn't want to do it. You know, I was like, I just want to go home. But then for the first time in my life, that sense of really hard work as a reward, it was just there.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was well paid. So I didn't resent them for that. There were people that I got on with. So Derek Burton was a kid from Barnsley. He was the IT technician. He's now our IT manager at Aire Global. There were a load of people at Elmwood, and they had some brilliant, talented people that have worked for us at Aire that I still know, that we use as partners and suppliers now. A guy called Lee Foster who runs he runs like a CGI animation business that we use, who's based in Leeds. And I got loads of contacts from there, and they were all really talented and some really good people. But it was just really, really long hours. And I think I did 3 years again at Elmwood, something like that. And but I learned a load. And Sarah Dear, she used to get me to write a proposal. So I'd never really written out and out creative proposals, strategic creative proposals. So she used to like micromanage me, which is fair enough. But I'd like write them and I'd print them out, give them to her, and she'd scrawl all over them. Bear in mind, I'm like 32 years old or whatever at this stage. I can't remember what I was. But she'd like write on them in red ink and then give me back and tell me to change them. So we're like, but I was learning, but I was. They just knew the stuff. These people, they were so good at what they did. So I was like, do you know what? Just wind your neck in, get rid of your ego, and just learn. Yeah. And I learned so much at Elmwood, so much. And there was a guy there called Tom Hyder, who was based in Hull. It's funny, Tom, actually, because he was like an art worker / designer / did a bit of CGI. So he was a bit like multi-talented. Yeah. But he was a bit of an odd character. Not everybody got on with Tom, but I got on with him really well. He loved the beer and everything else. And we always used to go for a drink after work. But he had to get back to Hull. And he had a wife over there and kids. But what used to happen was we'd be there so late, he couldn't get a train. So I'd be like, well, just come and keep at ours. So we'd go back to mine. So I'd have a bit, we'd have a few beers and he'd keep at ours, and then we'd go back to work and get off the next day. So again, it's just like you build relationships that way, helping each other out. Yeah. But we'd be there. I mean, the latest I was ever there was 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was back at Asda presenting at 7, 8 o'clock, picking, it was horrendous. But and
this is salaried, isn't it? So you're not getting any extra.
I don't get overtime. I've never been paid overtime in my life. No. I probably had about 3 bonuses, if that. But Elmwood paid well. I can't fault them for that. But yeah, I got paid. That was it. Yeah. There's nothing else in it. So, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the pace. And what I've learned now is I'm actually better when I'm at my limit.
When you're under pressure.
I mean, certain types, because there's different types of pressure, I think. But when you're under positive pressure, that's at the right level, that's where I operate my best. Motivated, focused, and I'll do anything to get a job done. Yeah. I'll work all night, and I've done that, so many times. But when you're at sort of 70%, 75, and, I've been looking at something called Parkinson's Law recently. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically, if you create time for a task, right, the people performing that task will expand into the time given. Yeah. So if you give somebody a week and it's only a day's job, they'll do it on the last day of the week, or it'll take them all week. Yeah. Because I'm looking at it, within our business, and I realise I'm a victim of that. Is that when I'm at full tilt, I'm good. When I'm not at full tilt, I've got to really fight that Parkinson's law kind of coming in and dominating, and get really structured and, make myself accountable either to someone else or myself. But Parkinson's law is a really interesting thing if you're managing other people. I
think they were on about it today on that course that I've been doing. They were on about doing webinars, and they said they found that if they gave somebody a time limit and a date in future, says we're going to do this webinar, get them to sign up for it. If they say, we're going to do it, I don't know, next Wednesday. Yeah. Rate of people that signed up were, I don't know, they might get like 80% or something that actually go and join, or whatever, or 60%. But if they said, we're doing a webinar in 5 minutes, he said it's nearly 100% of people will watch it. Mm. Even though it's like a 60-minute webinar, and they probably ain't got time, but says they just start watching it. And I think that's something to do with Parkinson's law.
It will be. And, why do you think DFS have always got a sale on?
Yeah.
It is, isn't it? So, yeah, I can't remember where I was there. But
so where did you go from? It's obviously, that's not, this isn't the job that you go to Switzerland, is it? Is this another job?
So that's one
that this sticks in my mind when you went to Switzerland.
So this is where things started to really change, actually. So I was starting to up my game, really, learn more and more about the design industry, particularly packaging and branding and everything else. So I learned I learned a fair bit at Storm. I learned a ton at Elmwood, and at Burnsley Homes I learned a lot because it taught me I actually created something out of nothing, and I created my own measures of success really. And so Tom, that's why I was talking about Tom earlier. So Tom Aire, he ended up, so I got a good relationship with Tom. He ended up leaving and joining a company in Leeds City Centre called Tag Pack on the calls.
Yeah.
And Tag Worldwide is a massive, a massive like marketing, communications, advertising agency. Worked with Jaguar Land Rover, everyone. They were huge. I can't remember what they turned over. It were hundreds of million. Owned by Steve Parish, who was the Crystal Palace chairman.
Yeah.
And
is this? He's not chairman anymore, is he?
I don't know.
Is that him that's on 5 Live?
No, that's Jordan. Is
it? Oh yeah, I'm thinking of him.
Yeah, so it's him who he bought it off him.
Right.
So I think he's still chairman now. He went off with he was going out with that brunette off Breakfast TV for a while.
Is it him that's Irish?
No, he's a proper Cockney.
I think.
Yeah, but he built Tag from like nothing. I mean, to this global agency working with global, prestige clients. So Tag Pack was their packaging. So you remember when I said Gratapan, but this is on like a different level. Tag Pack was their packaging division, but they didn't know anything about packaging. And they got these two blokes called Jonathan and Steve to set up Tag Pack in Leeds.
Yeah.
So it's kind of its own entity, but part of that kind of tag ecosystem thing. And Tom had gone to work for them in Leeds. And Tom had been bugging me for ages, and he was like, "Oh, get your CV in. You can't be working like that at Elmwood." And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm all right." And eventually, I sent him my CV, and he gave it to Johnny and Steve, who were the founding directors of Tag Pack at the time. So I had 2 or 3 meetings, popped in to see them. Nothing was really doing. They had contacted me one day about a job in India. I'm like, nah, you're all right. I was like, yeah, like working for P&G in India or Procter & Gamble in India. I was like, no, it's fine. Like, yeah, good. I don't like it hot anyway. And then, I used to remember the dates vividly, but so much has happened over the last 5 or 6 years that I do forget things nowadays. But where was I now? I was driving home. I think I pulled up outside my mum and dad's. And I got I think it was an email or a text or something saying, "Can you ring me?" And it was Steve from Tag Pack. And he went, so this was about like the 12th of December. I forget which year, 2012 or it? Something like that, about then. And so Steve says, "Oh, I've got this job that I think you might be interested in. It's in Geneva though." And I'll be honest with you, I was at a point where, I was going out with Tracy at the time and everything else, and everything was all good there. But I was like, something just told me I needed to do something big, something different. Because to be fair, Elmwood was great, but we were doing like massive ranges of canned veg for Asda. And I remember going into Asda one day, and I got on brilliant with the Asda lot. They were really good to me, but just going through, and they were like circling like garden peas that they wanted retouching, and I was just like, what am I doing? Do you know what I mean? I cared because I wanted to do a good job for the people at Asda, and Elmwood were decent with me, but I just didn't care about canned veg, at the time. I didn't, or I got to the end of my tether, and I was working such long hours that I was just like, I'm probably ready for a change. So he said, yeah, there's this job. It's on site with Procter & Gamble's European headquarters. So P&G is the biggest consumer goods company in the world, American company. And it's setting up an on-site studio. So we ain't got one at the minute, but we've got this contract. And it's working with their prestige fragrances. So they license all the fragrances, but they manage all the packaging and all the design through there.
Yeah.
Dolce & Gabbana, Lacoste, Hugo Boss, and all this. And I just said, yeah. Then I went, oh, Trace, I've just taken a job. In Switzerland. And she was like, all right. Right. So anyway, we got over that. So I took this job in Switzerland and turned up to I can't remember, Manchester Airport, wherever it was. And there was Tom. So Tom Aire went with us. There were like 4 of us, 5 of us went over initially. Yeah. So it was me and Tom, a kid called Ben Rising.
Yeah, I know Ben. Yeah, I've done some Ben's house.
Yeah, so I'd never met Ben before. He was a designer. And the 3 of us just met. Well, I knew Tom, but we met on this plane. Literally just sat there. It's how weird it was. And Steve, who was the director of Tag Pack, he's there as well. They used to just sleep every time he travelled. So he went to sleep. We're all getting to know each other. And And then we turned up in Switzerland, and I'm like, right, what next? Got to P&G. They put these desks aside for us right in the middle of the marketing floor, and they were just like iMacs in a box. Right, we had no internet. They wouldn't let us put a line into the building, so literally we had to go in to get operational within a week. Working initially on dongles, like Wi-Fi dongles that we had to go and buy. But buying a Wi-Fi dongle in Switzerland isn't easy when you don't speak French. And but they were like, look, it was just a nightmare. But do you know what? It was brilliant because we were just solving problems.
Yeah.
And we were just getting stuff happening. And I'll never forget, Steve, you're a bugger for stuff like this, Steve. But we had to do a presentation to like all the global marketing leaders from P&G about this on-site studio. And I'm like, well, no one will care. We're going to the main atrium at their European headquarters. It's massive. There must have been about 100 people in there. And these are like top global marketing people. I mean, like you wouldn't believe. Yeah, like you wouldn't believe. I mean, people where I'm a lad from Barnsley who basically walked away from a degree course and like half screwed his A-levels up. And the day before, Steve went, yeah, I don't want to do that presentation tomorrow, so I want you to do it. I'm like, I ain't even seen it. So I'm like, right. So I spent all night getting my head around this presentation about a model that I'd not developed of this on-site studio, what it meant in terms of cost savings, efficiencies and all that, because it was completely new to them. They used to just brief agencies all over the world, like top agencies paying them an absolute fortune. And we were there saying, well, you could do it for like a tenth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'd pay us the cost of the designer plus a contribution to overhead plus a margin, and it was fixed costs for every designer.
Yeah.
And it were up to them to get as much work in as possible, and I'd just manage all the relationships and everything else. So I had to present to all these people, and I was shitting myself. And I mean, shitting myself. And do you know what? That is when people talk about a moment in their life or career that makes them.
Yeah.
It was that for me. And just getting up, I just went, fuck it, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And just went up, delivered this presentation, held it together, managed to answer these questions, didn't trip up over my words. People could understand what I was saying. And you know what? I like 10 foot tall after that. It was that was the moment in my career where I thought, do you know what? I can do this.
Did you get some feedback off at people that were there? Did you kind of go into audience like you scored a goal?
I felt like that. It just went well, and they were engaged by it all, and they wanted to use us and everything else, and it just went from strength to strength. So by the time I left, so I was out there, I was going to, in my mind, it was a permanent role, but in my mind, I thought I'll do 2 years and I'll come back and,
I can remember you telling me that.
Yeah. But so Tracy and I used to only see each other like 4 days out of every month. She used to fly out for a week and I'd fly home for a weekend. And then Tracy fell pregnant with Erin, my daughter.
Yeah.
And so she was still, when people talk about, we've got people that work for us, and you always feel like, you're old manning people. I did it this way and I've done that and all that. But I really did, go, I worked hard.
Yeah.
I went the extra mile and I sacrificed a lot. And me and Tracy were apart for the entire time she was pregnant. And I didn't fly home till a week before Erin's due date.
Yeah.
So if she'd have come early, I'd have missed it. But I had a job to do out there. And I've had people that have worked for me, not just at Aire, but, and they're like, I can't be like more than an hour away from Leeds, like, because my girlfriend's due it next 3 months. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? But Tracy used to drive over the tops at middle of winter, to Manchester. I mean, full on, full pregnant, up until the point she couldn't fly, landing in Geneva Airport, it's 2 feet deep in snow. And it was like, we went the extra mile, and it paid off in the end, because whilst I was out there, so Johnny, the other director at Tag Park, rang me up and he was like, I've got this new business opportunity with Kellogg's, but it's all packaging design, and we don't do design, we do artwork and pre-press, all the technical stuff. He goes, you're the only one that really does design in Tag Park. Can you help me with it? I'm like, yeah, just give it to me. So we did this pitch, but me, a guy called Mark Folger, who was a designer, and Ben and Tom, we all just worked on this pitch for Kellogg's, doing all the creative ideas, putting it all together. And again, we were there till 2-3 o'clock in the morning on our kitchen table. We all lived together in this apartment, and we were just there working as a team, 2-3 o'clock in the morning every night that week, then going and doing our day jobs, then going back and doing it again to try and secure this business. Because at the time, they didn't know that I was like, I'm going to have to leave, because I'm thinking I'm going to have to, and I loved it there. I mean, loved it. What we'd done we built it from 4 or 5 people to like 12 or 13 people in a year, because they were like, we want more of this, more of this. We had interior architects working for us, designing big you know, like the big permanent displays you get in swanky department stores for like Dolce & Gabbana. So designing all that, honestly, it was brilliant what we did out there. And I've never loved a job as much as I love that. But I'm thinking, crap, like Erin's come in and I couldn't tell him, but I'm thinking, if we win this Kellogg's pitch, I've created a job for myself.
Yeah.
So I threw myself into it. The guys all did a brilliant job. And I flew back. We went to Kellogg's to do the pitch and all that. And they ended up awarding us the entire contract. And I'm like, honestly, because I didn't want to leave TAG. And that were it. But again, I look back and it was like, right, I didn't do it on my own. There was a big team worked on that. But I played a massive part in creating a job for myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then I was like, right, Steve, Johnny, I'm going to have to come back because Tracy's pregnant and all that sort of stuff. So I recruited someone to replace me out there, and that place went from strength to strength. And then, we came back and started working on Kellogg's.
And I know that when you started to set Aire Global up, that business, I know that it was stressful for you because every time you used to come out, you used to have cold sores lips and stuff. And I used to just think to myself, you know what I mean? You must be working under some stress.
Yeah.
You used to have cold spots, and that's what I mean. I suffer from.
I don't get so many these days. Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm saying, when I was younger, I used to constantly have them all time, and I didn't realise it's viral and it's stress.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, massively. And like, there's two points in my life. So that bit, you know, when I weren't feeling great in myself, was like the lowest, darkest point in my life of probably 2 years, 3 years, maybe 2 years, definitely. And then the hardest part of my life, right, was when we came back. So I was still going to Geneva quite a bit. And by the way, I had a fear of flying back then. I'm not so bad now. I really dislike it. But I used to be on a plane sometimes. I used to have like 4 flights a week some weeks. And every flight was horrible. So I was constantly like, you know, stressed out about flying. I had a little baby at home that I wanted to be with, but also every time I got on a plane, I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I'll never see her again and all that. It was like weird. But I did have this thing. I thought every time I got on a plane, I was going to die. And now Kellogg's are based in Dublin, so Manchester and Dublin. So I was flying to Dublin a lot. I was still going back to Geneva a bit, but also Kellogg's owned Pringles. And Pringles were based in Geneva, so I was just like always on a plane, always in airports. But we were implementing the Kellogg's account, right? And we didn't really have a team, so I'm trying to put a team together. So I got Rich Sostakowski back on board and a few other people that I knew, and we didn't have any processes or nothing. It was really, you know, we were building it all from scratch. And again, I'll never forget. I was. You know, I'd be on planes, I'd be working all Saturday, Sundays. You know, Tracy will vouch for this. I'd be there till 11 o'clock at night. But the thing is for me as well, I mean, I can't do it so much these days, but I used to find myself more productive about 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. It's really weird.
Yeah.
I could just go and, you know, if I had like a presentation to put together, or I had to go and like do a spread, I don't know, whatever. Something that's like, you know, deep work where you have to really get into it. Get kids to bed or get Erin to bed and just 9, 10, 11 at night, just plough through it.
Is that probably because there's nobody about? It's a bit more isolated.
Yeah, and I think what happened as well, because like I said, going back to the days when I weren't too right in myself, I didn't sleep well, and I just started to. I think it was just kind of a bit of a hangover from that. Whereas now, you know, I'm in a good place. Yeah. I'm ready for bed at like 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Deep
you know what I mean?
sleep.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was working my ass off basically, and we had a daughter. So we'd gone from my house up at Bond Road down to Tracy's, which was slightly smaller, because I needed to rent that out. So I was renting it out. That got wrecked twice by tenants, and again, you know, I'm not going to name names here, but that cost me thousands.
Yeah.
So I had that on top of the job, kid, you know, and anybody who's had kids. I don't know about you, Sam, but when Erin came along, it was like I've never been a natural parent.
Yeah.
I found it really hard, like super hard. Just didn't get it.
Like an oil tanker stopping, innit?
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get into being a parent groove.
Yeah, but I was like, I was just paranoid though about getting ill, and it was just horrible.
Yeah.
And it weren't. The thing is as well, looking back, it should have been a pleasant experience, but it wasn't. And she's gorgeous, she's lovely, and she was a beautiful baby. But I just, I really struggled with having a baby.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously it puts a lot of strain on Trace, and it was just a hard time.
Yeah.
Really hard time. Then when the second one comes along, you're like booting him around, aren't you? He'll be right. It's totally different.
Second, I mean, you were okay, but I've found with two, first and grandparents have, we'll have them straight away. But once you have two, like it's a bit more. Might be doing something this week.
But yeah, it was a really hard time. It was a really, really hard time. But I was all over the place for work, flying a lot, down in London a bit, 'cause Tag were based, their headquarters are down there. And then I'm not going into too much detail around this, but yeah, basically the opportunity came up to get involved with a startup, which turned out to be Aire.
Yeah, and then obviously you've built Aire up, and now you're just smashing it because you're winning these awards. You're taking people on. Have you opened in a Manchester office?
We've had a Manchester office for a few years, yeah.
And so you've got office in Leeds, office in Manchester, and you're just growing, aren't you?
Yeah. So with Aire, what we realised was when we were out in P&G in Geneva, there's like a level of design. So traditionally, when you're designing packaging, you have your design agency, which does the big idea. So like a brand owner will say, I want to launch product X, and this is why. There's a consumer need, and this is what we're going to do. Right? And these are the benefits and whatever of that product. And then they'll go and brief a big, expensive, global or London-based strategic design agency to come up with a massive idea of how we're going to, what's Pampers going to look like, or what's Coca-Cola going to look like. So it's a brand mark or a name, an identity, and they'll build that from scratch. And they do a very good job of it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
They build brands basically from scratch. So create that brand DNA. And then historically, what they've done is those big expensive agencies will then design the packaging identity, and then they'll do all the little variants, then they'll do the different pack sizes, and it's really expensive. And then what they do is they've got some beautiful looking stuff, and then they give it to an artwork and pre-press company. They're the ones that take that and turn it into a printable file, do all the colour management and all that, which is a really technical and complex process. And what they do is they do all this beautiful stuff, then they go, throw it at these artwork and pre-press companies and go deal with that. Shit files, not set up properly. Yeah. Half the time there's too many colours. So they've sold this big idea into these brand owners. Everything looks gorgeous. And then you can't print that.
Yeah.
Ain't got enough colours or whatever. And it goes on and on and on. And then what happens is you end up with loads. So you pay all this money up here for something you can't always use, right? Or you've got to then tweak. And then you pay all this money here, loads of iterations because it's not been done properly from the start. To get something printable. And then at the end, never quite happy because that's not what we were sold in up here. And what we realised was that the work we were doing in P&G actually sat in the middle. So essentially you've got tier 1, which is your strategic design, coming up with the brand DNA and identity. Then you had tier 3, which is your artwork and pre-press, the technical. And there was this big gap in the middle where for tier 2 design, which is actually saying to the tier 1 agencies, do a bit less, pay them less, stop paying them £1 million, pay them £500,000, right? Save 250 grand. And where you'd have paid them £500,000, pay us 250 grand. And we'll do just as good a job in terms of taking that big idea and amplifying it across your pack sizes, formats, different variants and different markets.
Yeah.
Whereas you used to pay these big expensive agencies to do that. And we realised there's this massive gap. And it's called tier 2 design, adaptive design, adapting that big idea for whatever touch point it's going on to. And that's where Aire Global came from. And we were the first agency in the world to do that.
That's what I'm saying. So you saw a gap in market and you first, and as any other setup then since.
Funnily enough, so a lot of our big competitors out there either went and acquired a design agency and then badged it as tier 2 adaptive design.
Yeah.
And started, funnily enough, a lot of the big global agencies that have tagged on, because adaptive design is now a thing. Tier 3-tiered design model or 3-tiered agency model is now a big thing. And Kellogs were the first to adopt it. And, with Tag. And obviously P&G were doing it, but they didn't realise they were doing it. But yeah, so we've been imitated by all of the big boys pretty much.
So what's going to happen in future with Aire Global then? Were you going to take it next?
So Aire Global is really our plan at the minute is, again, a lot of the big network agencies, they have dots on a map. So when they go in and pitch to a client, They're like, we've got people in, I don't know, Delhi, we've got people in, Thailand, we've got people, and we're like, we don't need to do that. That's historical. That's a really kind of flabby way to do things, because all of those different sites have their own P&L.
Yeah.
They have their own objectives. They don't talk to the other sites. Right. So basically, you just get this clients think they're buying this big global footprint, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And they get a lot of duplication, a lack of communication. And what we've said is actually centralize your global operations. And they go, but what about the local in market knowledge? We could put an account manager in market.
Yeah.
We could put someone in your team. You don't need 17 people in Delhi designing for Delhi. You might need 2 people. So we basically, our centralized model is been built to deliver global design for global brand owners in the same way that a lot of the big ones, and it does it in a lot more efficient way. It's more efficient for us. It's technically cheaper for the client, and it's quicker. And what they do is they give us a brief, and we can design packs for any global market, but we do them all at the same time, so they get consistency. So everywhere you see a Kellogg's pack in Europe, it looks the same, and that's what brand owners want. It's consistency.
I know you did a design for what it in Braille or something.
They are in IB.
Yeah, were you first to do that?
Yeah, so that came from Kellogg's really. So Kellogg's did a bit of a trial, but we've now invested a load of money and time in what's called inclusive design. So for sight loss, inclusive design can be people with disabilities, openings and closures, making things easier to use. But for us, what we've really become is literally the global experts now in inclusive design for the visually impaired. So we're now looking at how colours work, contrast, so people can read them. Bear in mind, over the age of 40, most people's sight starts to deteriorate.
Definitely.
So it's not just for people that are completely blind.
We all got glasses on at 50.
Yeah, I mean, even I've got a pair, but I don't wear them. But yeah, it's not just people that are completely, disabled with sight, but for people that, elderly people that can't shop properly anymore. So we're looking at all of that. It's a real innovation area for us. But for Aire Global at the minute, we're winning new business. We want to retain our existing clients. We want to become, in our minds, the most efficient, sort of productive, adaptive design agency in the world. But we recently merged with our sister company, which was Aire Pro, which is production. So Aire Design and Aire Pro merged to form one company, which is now Aire Global.
Yeah.
So we can basically take an input from tier 1 design and basically get it on a press pretty much. We don't print the materials, but we get everything up to that all under one roof.
Brilliant.
And we've managed to maintain that creative culture alongside the technical. And that's what we're working on at the minute, is now making Aire Global really kind of the company that we want it to be. And that's where we're hyper competitive now. Is that a lot of companies can't do that because they do it through acquisition and they just don't talk and join up, whereas we are one seamless company. And also technology. We want to become the world's first technology agency, whereby technology underpins everything that we do. And we have automated artwork solutions, which are industry leading at the minute, where we can basically, if we can get the inputs right, we can create artworks in seconds using artificial intelligence.
Brilliant. So if anybody wanted to get in contact with you, Miles, how would they do it?
www.aireglobal.com.
And ask for Miles.
Just pop us an email and we'll see it.
Well, I'm going to wrap it up. It's been a pleasure talking to you, mate.
Yeah.
Seamless interview. You've just talked and talked and talked. That's been brilliant. So I'll start to wrap it up now. I'll just ask you one last thing: is what do you think best advice anybody's ever given you, work-wise? Can you think of that?
Maybe not best advice, because do you know what? I haven't had tons of advice. I probably have, and I might have forgotten some. So I might be doing some people a disservice. But I've had very few people that are classed as a mentor, which is a bit sad, really. But people have got day jobs and everything else. I guess the one bit of advice I'd give to anyone is just work hard. Hold yourself accountable, and understand that things don't happen to you; they happen because of you.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, thanks a lot, Miles. And that's the end of the damp show.